what is the measurement of happiness? I guess it's not a constant. It depends on the current circumstances. And I think that for everyone in Ukraine, as well as for all Ukrainians and Ukrainian citizens abroad, the only measurement of happiness is peace. Peace in Ukraine after the end of the war that lasts not only for 50 years, not even for 8 years, but probably for centuries. Slava Ukraini!
50 days ago, Russian troops initiated a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now Putin's army have destroyed multiple cities: Mariupol, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel. There is not a single spot in Ukraine where the silence wasn't broken by an air siren. In the last 50 days, more than 7,665 civilians and 2,000 of the Ukrainian forces personnel were killed. Most of the civilian casualties recorded were caused by the use of explosive weapons with the wide impact area, including shelling from heavy artillery, multiple launch rocket systems, and missile air and strike. We have also lost a few journalists due to this war. Yevgeny Sakhon was the first journalist killed since February 24th. He is a victim of Russian airstrike sent on the Kiev TV tower on March 1st. 6 more journalists were killed by Russian soldiers, 4 shot and 1 killed by shelling. The dead include an American documentarian, Brent Renaud, Ukrainian photojournalist, Marks Levin, and most recently, a Lithuanian documentarian, Mantas Kvedaravičius. More than 4.5 million refugees have left the country as of April 9th. An estimated of 6.5 million people have been displaced within Ukraine. Half of the Ukrainian children right now are not anymore in Ukraine. They were sent out because they are the future of Ukraine. Europe and other countries around the world are united against Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine, yet they currently pay Russia up to $1 billion per day for oil and natural gas. Revenue from oil and gas-related taxes and tariffs are accounted for 45% of Russian federal budget in January 2022. This war has touched every Ukrainian family. It has touched a lot of families around the world, and we do need to unite, and we need to end this. And we are grateful to Canada and to Canadian government, to Justin Trudeau for Canada was one of the first to go to the court, to International Criminal Court, to nominate Russia and Putin so they will be punished, and it has to happen, guys. They have to be punished for this. Thank you.
Guys, as you can see, we have the figures here that represent the scene that was that happened in Bucha, and we just wanted to somehow represent the people who were found dead on the street of Bucha. And we made these ones in their memory and to show other people what was happening on the street. And of course this would never represent that, but we just did it as a just as something. The names Bucha, Irpin and Hostomel will forever stick in history as the places of the most violent brutalities Russian troops have committed since the invasion of Ukraine. After the Russian occupants left, the world was shocked to see the evidence of civilians being shot with their hands tied behind their back, mass graves, a woman shot biking on her way to the shelter. Today, the regions are focused on discovering and identifying the bodies. There are shortages of body bags, and they were all civilians. More and more deep and shallow graves are being discovered. Delegations from around the world have been sent to these once bright and lively Kyiv suburbs to document these monstrous crimes against humanity. As Justin Trudeau said in his interview yesterday, it's absolutely right that more people be talking and using the word genocide in terms of what Russia is doing, what Vladimir Putin has done. Canada was one of the first countries to move forward at the International Court to hold Vladimir Putin and his criminal government accountable. Justice will prevail and Ukraine will be free once again.
Let me speak a bit about my hometown called Kharkiv. I was born and raised and lived there for 20 years. I was planning to come over and stay there after I traveled around the world and seen around a bunch of things, and I was planning to stay there. I've got property bought last year. I was planning to settle down there, and was having a bunch of friends and relatives there. But on February 24th this year, deceitfully, the Russian army invaded Ukraine, started shelling my home city, started killing people, started killing a bunch of freedom and bunch of human lives. So since the history of Soviet Union, for example, Kharkiv was the first capital of Ukraine. We've been always inclined towards Russia and been influenced by the Russian culture a lot. Lots of people from my hometown speak Russian, but deceitfully the Russian president is telling everyone that they are coming over to us to make us free from denazification, from demilitarization. This is completely arrogance. This is not right. Once Kharkiv was considered the capital, the cultural capital of the Ukraine. We had a bunch of theaters, we had a bunch of operas, and a bunch of cultural people out there. Now the people are fleeing from the city. About 40% of the people left. About 400,000 people left from the city. All other ones are hiding in the metro stations. And our cultural opera guys are making a bunch of good, how would I say that, cheer-ups for the people, and it brings a lot of heartwarming gifts to the people, and they don't forget that the freedom is nearby. Our army is strong, and we're gonna survive, and we're gonna live through this war. So all I want is that my relatives and relatives of my relatives, that are around 40 million people in Ukraine, are free, healthy and safe in their homes, and this war should be done. It should be over. Thank you.
Mariupol is a city in southeastern Ukraine on the north coast of the Sea of Azov. It's a major port and a key target for Russia as it seeks to establish a land route to the Crimea Peninsula, which it annexed in 2014. The city has been the focus of a devastating assault by Russian forces, and Ukrainian troops there have said that they're running out of ammunition, based on the information shared by the Associated Press 3 days ago. The population of Mariupol stood at over 400,000 before the Russian invasion. Residents are unable to escape the siege, and they have struggled to access the basic needs to survive. You can see a beautiful, welcoming picture of the city. However, it took only a few days for the war to turn this great place into a devastated ruin. The mayor of the besieged Ukrainian port city of Mariupol said on Monday that more than 10,000 civilians have died in the Russian siege of the city. the death toll could surpass 20,000 people. He said nothing that dead bodies were carpeted through the streets. He also said that Russian forces brought mobile cremation equipment to Mariupol to dispose the bodies, and he accused Russian forces of refusing to allow humanitarian convoys into the city in an attempt to conceal the carnage. Russian forces have taken many bodies to huge shopping center where they have refrigerators. Mobile crematoriums have arrived in the form of trucks. As the mayor said, you open it and there is nothing but pipe inside which these bodies are burned. Thousands of residents are still trapped in Mariupol, with scant access to food, water and electricity since Russian forces surrounded the city. Thousands of residents are still trapped and maybe dead while we are standing and speaking here. About 120,000 civilians are in dire need of food, water, warmth and communications. Only those residents, according to the mayor, who have passed the Russian filtration camps are released from the city. He said improvised prisons are organized for those who did not pass the filtration, while at least 33,000 were taken to Russia or to separatist territory in Ukraine. A senior US defense official said that Russian airstrikes continue to target Mariupol, and the US does not believe that city has been fully taken by Russia, still not fully taken. Earlier on Wednesday, so yesterday, Reuters journalists saw flames from the Azovstal steelworks, where Marines from the 36th Brigade have been holding for weeks. It's an awful example of war, which is not only a war, but also a genocide of Ukrainian people. And as everyone here, we hope that it will be over and peace will come back to Ukraine forever, once and forever.
So we represent here just couple cities which struggled and which were bombed and ruined by Russian invasion. Chernihiv is one of them. It is located just 140 kilometers from Kyiv and serves as a gate for Russian troop invasion. People from Chernihiv region suffered and continue suffering a lot. Everything started from gas that stopped, then light, then food disappeared. People started making fires in front of their homes. And you probably heard that in the middle of March, 14 people were instantly killed while they were standing in the line for bread. And this is just one of the examples that Russian invaders do to Ukraine. And we also need to understand that even though it seems like the war might be far, you never know when it comes to your home. I want to share a personal example. I am personally coming from the city which is rather safe. It's Vinnytsia. And at the start of the war, my parents accommodated the family from Chernihiv region. And the week after they arrived to Vinnytsia, their apartment building was bombed. More than 20 people died, including children. And they don't know whether if they go home, if they will still have place to live in. So you never know when it comes to your home, closer to your family. So let's support each other. Let's think about those who died and those who survived. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Let's support Ukraine with whatever we can here.
And now please let's commemorate people who died in this war with the minute of silence.
last weekend, our Ukrainian community gathered to recognize the atrocities Russia is perpetrating in Ukraine. We stood just a few blocks from here on Poppy Plaza, a location that marks the sacrifice of citizens who have served to protect our freedom and security. Maybe one day we will include the names of those who are currently serving in Ukraine. But if we are to properly acknowledge all of those, we must include not only the armed forces, but every citizen in Ukraine and outside of its borders. And indeed, that plaza would have to be much, much larger. As heads of state begin to use the word genocide to describe what is happening in Ukraine, some have raised questions as to the appropriateness of this word. I would like to share a few thoughts from the acclaimed historian Timothy Snyder, who wrote the following about the Kremlin's open declaration of their intentions in Ukraine. The Russian handbook is one of the most openly genocidal documents I have ever seen. It calls for the liquidation of the Ukrainian state and for the abolition of any organization that has any association with Ukraine. In fact, the majority of the Ukrainian population, so more than 20 million people, are to be killed or sent to work in labor camps to expurgate their guilt for not loving Russia. Survivors are to be subject to re-education. Children will be raised to be Russian, and the name Ukraine will disappear. He concludes, legally, genocide means both actions that destroy a group in whole or in part, combined with the intention to do so. Russia has done the deed and confessed to the intention. To this I say Canada and the West cannot stand by and let this genocide happen. I remind everyone that the United Nations principle of responsibility to protect, which is simply an extension of every human's moral obligation to avoid enabling evil and to actively do good. Simply stated, responsibility to protect is an international norm adopted by the United Nations that seeks to ensure that the international community never again fails to halt the mass atrocity crimes of genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. The international community, through the United Nations, has the responsibility to help protect populations from these abominable acts. And yet we see that the perpetrators of this genocide sit on the Security Council of the very body intended to protect the innocent from aggression. Surely this cannot stand, and in the face of such blatant injustice, we must equip Ukraine with the means to defend itself from this cynical and brutal oppressor. Each of us gathers here because we cannot stand by to witness a second Holodomor, or the forced deportation of tens of thousands to Russia, or the destruction of yet another generation of beautiful, talented, intelligent, and courageous Ukrainians. Those who are showing the entire world what it means to be a model of human dignity. Responsibility to protect, whether an international norm or simply a personal duty, calls upon us as humans to do all that we can to prevent these brutal assaults on human life. If we cannot fight, let us volunteer. If we cannot volunteer, let us donate. If we cannot donate, let us live with greatest personal dignity to honor those whose sacrifice we bear witness to today. These are the actions that will lead us to justice and to victory. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
And I think we will sing the Ukrainian national anthem. Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запанує
свободі, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!